With so many expectations placed on young people, the pressure to succeed can be overwhelming. During the exam season, when you leave the exam room and you fear you've not done as well as you may have liked, it's not helpful to spend time focusing on negativities and what ifs. That'll only heighten the anxiety. Joining us to elaborate are SADC Ambassador Genevieve Dix and educational psychologist Tsepiso Matenji. A very warm welcome to you, ladies. I'd like to start with you, Tsepiso. When we talk about those pressures and you're not sure of what's happened, what are some of the things that a lot of young people are going to be going through in this season of waiting for those exam results and thinking of what does this mean for the year ahead?
Because there's something external coming out that says you didn't do as well as you thought. Most often, like anybody who gets feedback that's negative after you thought you put your best in it, you actually relive the experience. You are actually going back to the exam, remembering what you wrote and the mistakes you thought you made, and suddenly all the mistakes you've ever made before become amplified. And the loss of self-confidence, the self-worth goes down, it plummets, and it becomes even more amplified by the fact that you are aware that you've disappointed your parents, and that at that moment everything is a catastrophe. You feel like you are never going to make it in life, you are a failure, your life is finished. So the intensity of the emotions then becomes heightened, and it helps when parents know that that failure, simply not having your name in the newspaper, is not just about them, it's also about what this person is thinking about beyond what they're currently receiving. They're reviewing everything they've ever done. They think, oh, maybe because I didn't sleep that night, I forgot everything, or maybe I should have done this, and this is what somebody said. So all the negative experience suddenly replay. So it's like you're reliving a nightmare, and you cannot even get away with it because it sits in it. So if you think about it, what you're going to say anyway as a parent, there's nothing worse that you could possibly say that that person hasn't thought themselves already. And even if you add negative things, you're actually making the situation even more explosive. It helps, therefore, when you counteract that and you give very positive options for the person to recognize that we understand what you're feeling. It happens. And it's not so much that right now your marks are, or your name is not in the newspaper. It's what we do to recover from it.
And I think that's what's so important is it's not the end of the world. Your life is not ended now. You know, this is an incident that has happened. It's 1 year. And there's other things that could happen in your life. You cannot focus and think, this is the end. I will never make anything out of my life.
People lose perspective, I think. With all the stress and height and pressure put on matric and passing matric, you lose perspective of the rest of your life. And if you do fail, you can rewrite the year. You can go to the Department of Education and say, please can I redo my matric year? It might be embarrassing as a person to return to your school and have to repeat it, but it's 1 year for the rest of your life that could make a difference.
And I would like to talk a little bit about that because I remember I was 16 when I went to university, and then the following year I couldn't afford to go back. And 4 years I waitressed and did odd jobs and had to go back 4 years later. So there I am sitting, and I'm one of the oldest people and had to redo my first year. And you know, I would imagine that what you're saying is very true of the embarrassment and all of that, but it passes. You know, and I did finish my degree and I went on with my life, and now that doesn't even matter when I think of it. So I want you to bring that back when you talk about perspective, because I didn't think of it in the way that you've put it, Tsepiso, of that one failure is not to them just this incident, it's their entire lives.
Yeah, and if you think about it, because you are replaying the script of all the mistakes, all the failures, all the things that you regret, any feedback that people are going to tell you, even if people say it's not that bad, oh come on, you can still recover, you can redo the matric, there's other options, you're not going to hear it because you're saturated with how bad you feel about yourself. Your self-worth is diminished, your self-efficacy, which has to do more with your perception of how well you're doing and the feedback you're receiving from other people about how well you're doing. At that moment you thought you were better, but the feedback you're getting is that actually you are not as good as you thought. It makes you feel incompetent. It makes you feel like you don't have control over your life. You feel helpless, you feel powerless, but you feel like you are a devastating embarrassment and disappointment to your family. The whole world is watching you. So that sense of height, and then remember you're talking about people who are 17, 18. So their level of emotional maturity, their level of self-knowledge and self-awareness and self-management is not really that high. because they're still growing, they're still developing. We know that their ability to self-regulate, to plan, to evaluate, to make judgments that are sound is not as well as it should be. So it is important at that moment to realize that you actually need to validate the person, to make them realize, I understand. I've been through this before. I know what you're feeling. Put words to what they're feeling, but contain the emotions so that they don't go and off themselves, which is what happens sometimes. That you have kids, because it's so heightened and they cannot rationalize it, they cannot deal with it, they don't even know what they're feeling. It's just a mixture and mangled mousse of all the emotions. They feel that it's the end of the world.
And how real is that, Genevieve? Because Genevieve, I keep on trying to call you Genevieve. Genevieve, how real is that? Because this is a period where you do get high suicide rates among young people because of this height. And I think sometimes because it's so far from some people that we don't realize how big of an issue it actually is.
But the pressure that's placed on matric is blown out of proportion, and with the emotions being heightened in children, if they're already suffering with depression, that just adds to their hopelessness and their despair. And a lot of kids, there was a case a couple of years ago where a child killed himself and he actually got 7 distinctions. So it's not even necessarily about failing the exams, it's about all the expectations of the people around you. So it's important as a parent to be supportive. You are disappointed if they don't do as well, but that's only because you want them to succeed. You want them to go forward and have the best in life. And it's important to let the child know that no matter what happens, you'll be there, and there's always another plan and a different route that you guys can go.
It's a piece of, I don't want to let go of this story. I just want to go back to it. What happens? Because that can't be just a once-off incident of I don't know if I'm going to pass, and so now I'm going to kill myself.
It's a script developed over time.
Yeah.
Because of, as a family, look at your patterns of dealing with failure and dealing with success. Because we tend to celebrate and amplify success, but the degree to which we amplify it and celebrate it is often less than the degree we talk a lot and make a big deal about failures. So if you are a family who make a big deal about what mistakes people make, you may find that even when a person has done well, that's what is expected. Mm-hmm. Of course, that's what you're supposed to do. We've done well, they haven't done. So you find that the amount of recognition and reward and celebration is actually less, because that's what we expect. We knew you were smart. Of course you could do it. But also you may find that other disappointments that the child has had growing up, and what you as a family deal with in terms of problems, you may be pushing them through under the carpet. You don't really deal with things, or you become more you don't talk to people, you use silent treatment as part of dealing with problems. Those are all actually the life skills you may not have taught your child, but also as a family you haven't developed to deal with crisis. And so for that moment, it's a crisis for the child. They don't have the tools to deal with it.
Genevieve, I'm thinking that as a society generally, it seems as though we focus so much on success that we don't talk sometimes about the benefits of failure. I was reading this article about this really successful multi-millionaire entrepreneur, and she was saying that her dad, if her and her siblings couldn't tell them one thing that they had failed at that day, he'd be so disappointed. Because if you're living life, there's got to be something that you failed at today and you learned from. When we talk about that, I would just like you to speak about putting it into perspective of you can't just focus on success and being absolutely amazing, because nobody is at their A game all the time.
Yeah, people aren't perfect, and failure is a part of life in every aspect, whether it's school, marriages, relationships, friendships. Everything at some stage changes. Change is a part of life. It's the only constant thing in life. And being a matric pupil who might not pass is not the end of the world. There are other options out there for you, and you can move forward from that. It's an opportunity to grow and learn. Everything is an opportunity to grow and learn. No matter what failure it is in life, it will change you and develop you into a better person at the end of the day.
So what would be key to do? What is one of the first things as a parent or the support group that you would say? And even as friends, if you're all in matric and then your best friend doesn't make it, what are the things you say? Because I would imagine that to say, oh, don't worry about it, you're going to do better. I think that's probably not what they want to hear right then. What is the first thing that you say?
To validate them. Like I said, you need to be able to recognize that this person needs to know that what they're feeling is okay. That the sense of devastation and loss and the catastrophe that they're seeing at that moment it is okay. You have permission to marinate in this pain because you're disappointed in yourself and you feel that right now it's the end of the world. I am here with you. No matter what happens, we are going to go through it together. So at that moment, for that person to know that you don't have to hide, you don't have to be ashamed, and what you're going through, you're not going through it alone. From then on is to talk to them about the options that are available. But you see, that conversation should have happened before we reached grade 12 and before we wrote the exams. That's why we have first choice, second choice, third choice. My son has fifth choice, and all of them cover university, college, and technical college, and even a college that is not even necessarily part of what you study over 6 months. It might be 2 months only. So you need to be also including in that repertoire of options that the child has a gap year or something where you just go and work and you do nothing or you loiter. But as people, we do not necessarily accommodate those things, and we want to have that conversation at that moment. The other part is there's nothing like empathy. You need to have empathy for the person. If you as a parent are always coming across like you are perfect, there's nothing like somebody who's perfect telling you, don't worry, it's okay. Because you look at them and you're measuring yourself against them and you think, of course, your life is perfect. It's been easy for you. And when you're having the conversation with your child, even if as an aunt or as an elder brother, try to make them realize that you've been through something similar. So when you have conversations about your failures, just how devastating it was, and how you thought you would never recover. And if you leave those things and show them that concretely, I was able to make it through. And I was in the worst case, I was not as smart as you were. So I've been through it. And if you can make it, if I can make it, so can you. It's not something special. It's in your DNA to be able to make it. Then you are actually giving somebody permission to see that they are resilient, they can bounce back. The other part in giving them examples of how they can make it is making them relate back.
We're going to come back to that, because I think it's important that we speak about options and everything else that they can do after that, because I think that's the big question, is what now? So we're going to continue with that. Well, if we do receive disappointing results, then inevitably we will need to share that information with our parents. What can be done to ease the anxiety surrounding the whole situation, and what options are available if our results don't allow for what we've planned for our future. We have much more to share.